The day I collapsed from heart failure, I lay alone in our large house during a power outage. My husband and son were outside, setting off fireworks across the city for another woman. After what felt like an endless night, my son finally came home. He kicked my emergency medication, which lay by my foot, with disgust. "Mom, can you please stop faking illnesses for sympathy? Bella is so upset because of you, she can't even eat." My husband, Daniel, shielded our son, his voice laced with annoyance. "Eleanor, have you made enough of a scene? Bella just got back from overseas, and she's emotionally fragile. As the lady of the house, can't you be more generous and accommodating?" I looked up at the man whose face once swore to protect me from any grievance. I didn't argue. I just quietly signed the organ donation consent form I'd hidden at the bottom of a drawer. 8 years ago, Daniel had written on a greeting card, "My heart beats only for Eleanor." Our 8-year-old son had awkwardly drawn a heart on it, adding, "I'll protect mommy forever too." They seem to have forgotten. It's fine. They'll remember the day my heart stops beating for good. The pen scratched across the paper, and the moment my name was signed, a dull, heavy ache pulsed in my chest again. I pressed my hand to my left side, cold sweat tracing paths down my cheeks. It took a while for the pain to subside slightly. I folded the organ donation consent form and tucked it into the deepest part of the drawer. The lock clicked as I turned the key, just as the front door downstairs swung open. "Watch your step. Don't twist your ankle." That was Daniel's voice, hushed and unusually gentle and patient. A tone he rarely used with me. I held onto the banister as I walked downstairs. Daniel was carefully escorting a woman inside. It was Bella Rivera, his college sweetheart, the woman who once made him smoke an entire pack of cigarettes alone late at night. Now she was brazenly walking into my home. Bella scanned the living room after entering, her gaze finally landing on me. A smile played on her lips, but her body subtly snuggled closer to Daniel. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I just got back to the country and haven't found a place yet. I'll have to bother you for a few days. You don't mind, do you?" I gripped the banister tightly, my failing heart pounding even harder in my chest. What good would minding do? Last night, Daniel hadn't even discussed it with me. He'd simply informed me she was moving in. Before I could answer, 8-year-old Leo, clutching a new pair of slippers, ran up to Bella. "Bella, wear these. They're super soft." My vision blurred as I looked down. Those were the slippers I'd trekked to 3 different stores under the scorching sun to buy just 2 days ago. When I first brought them home, Leo had clung to my leg, playfully begging, saying I would look the prettiest wearing them. Now he didn't hesitate to give them away to impress another woman. Bella smiled and ruffled Leo's hair as she put on the slippers. They were a bit too big, and she frowned prettily. Seeing this, Daniel immediately glared at me, his brows furrowed in displeasure. "Eleanor, you're usually just idling around at home. Why can't you even manage basic preparations for a guest? Bella has small feet. Giving her such big slippers, are you deliberately trying to embarrass her?" My stomach churned with acid. I took a deep, nauseous breath. They were bought for me, of course they wouldn't fit her. I didn't argue. I just turned and walked towards the sofa. My body swayed as I moved too quickly, and I had to grab the back of the sofa to steady myself. Daniel didn't notice anything amiss. He pulled Bella to sit opposite me. "You've been busy all morning, Bella must be hungry. Go to the kitchen now and prepare something light. Bella has a sensitive stomach and can't eat greasy food." He leaned back on the sofa, issuing orders. In the past, I would have rushed into the kitchen, eager to earn a word of praise. But today, I was simply too exhausted. The sharp pain in my chest had drained all my strength, let alone the energy to cater to his first love. I took off my apron and draped it over the back of the sofa. "I'm a bit tired. I don't feel like cooking. You guys can order takeout or go out." Daniel froze, apparently not expecting his usually obedient wife to dare to refuse him in front of an outsider. A cold, angry sneer quickly appeared on his face. "Eleanor, you've grown a temper, have you? Bella just arrived today, and you're already putting on airs as the lady of the house, even haggling over a single meal? This little game you're playing, it just makes me sick." Even my refusal to serve them was seen as a tactic to gain his attention. Before I could speak, Leo pouted and pointed at me. "Mom is so selfish. She never does anything around the house, and she won't even cook something for us. Bella just got back and worked so hard, you don't even care about her. Bella is much gentler than you." Each word from my 8-year-old son pierced my heart. This was the home I'd sacrificed my career to care for 8 years. This was also the consequence of the heart condition I developed after risking my life to give birth to him. In the end, I couldn't even compare to a stranger. My heart began to beat erratically, and my vision blurred again. I knew I couldn't stay. I calmly turned, dragging my heavy steps towards the guest room on the first floor, leaving the master bedroom and living room to the 3 of them. "Stop right there. Who are you putting on this poor me act for?" Daniel demanded from behind me, his voice simmering with rage. I didn't pause until I reached the guest room and closed the door behind me. Soon Bella's soft, comforting voice could be heard outside. Daniel, don't blame Eleanor. She's probably upset that I'm here. Let's just go out to eat. Leo chimed in, eager to take her out for a fancy meal, and then the front door slammed shut. The house fell silent instantly, leaving only my labored breathing. I slid down the door to the floor, fumbled for my emergency medication, and dry swallowed a few pills. Once my breathing steadied, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Dr. Miller, it's Eleanor Vance. I've already signed the organ donation confirmation form. How long does the process usually take? The voice on the other end sounded heavy, sighing just before I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock outside the door. I quickly hung up and flipped my phone face down, struggling to stand upright. Leo ran in, clutching an old notebook with yellowed edges, heading straight for the living room. That was my journal from when I was pregnant with him, documenting the 300+ shots I'd taken to protect the pregnancy, and the joy of counting his fetal movements. I'd always kept that journal cherished in the living room's glass display cabinet. I walked out of the guest room and saw Leo placing the journal directly under the plate Bella was holding. Bella, the table is a bit wobbly. I'll use this to prop it up so your food won't spill. Blood rushed to my head. I strode over, intending to pull the journal out, but Bella deliberately pressed down on its edge. She looked up, feigning innocence, but a subtle smile played on her lips. Eleanor, I'm so sorry. Leo said this was just an old, worthless notebook, so I used it as a coaster. Don't be angry with the boy. I'll just help you wipe it clean later. The bottom of the plate scratched deep marks into the cover. The moment my fingers touched the journal's edge, Leo forcefully shoved me. Unprepared, I stumbled backward and hit the wall. A dull pain shot through my back. Why are you scaring Bella? What's a few old notebooks worth anyway? Dad can just buy you new ones. Leo stood in front of Bella, glaring at me with open hostility. Daniel walked out of the kitchen, carrying a cup of hot milk. Without asking for an explanation, he frowned and reprimanded me. Eleanor, what's gotten into you first thing in the morning? You've completely ruined the atmosphere. What's the big deal if an old journal is used as a coaster? Is it worth laying hands on a child over? My fingernails dug deeply into my palms, blood seeping from my skin. That was my journal from when I lay in the hospital for half a year, fighting to give birth to Leo. My voice was dry and tight. Daniel's eyes flickered with an unnatural expression, but he quickly hardened his face. He pulled out his black credit card from his wallet and tossed it onto the dining table, sliding it towards Bella. Bella, after you eat, let Leo take you shopping. Use this card for whatever you want. Consider it compensation for the trouble you went through today. He was using my money to please another woman, to compensate her for the shock of using my journal as a coaster. A metallic taste of blood rose in my throat. My legs gave out, and I slid down the wall, clutching my chest. Cold sweat trickled down my forehead. I gasped for air, but it felt like I couldn't breathe. Leo, standing by, rolled his eyes and snorted. Dad, look, she's acting again. Every time she can't win an argument, she pretends to be sick. That trick is so old. Bella, let's ignore her. We'll go buy a big transformer. Daniel looked at my pale face and trembling body, his brow furrowing. He took a step forward, but Bella grabbed his sleeve. Daniel, I feel a bit dizzy. Maybe I haven't adjusted to the time difference yet. Daniel immediately turned to steady Bella, not sparing me another glance. I gritted my teeth, swallowed the metallic taste in my throat, and used the wall to slowly push myself up. I walked to the dining table. Right in front of them, I forcefully pulled out the crumpled journal. The cover was already stained with grease. I didn't look at it again, simply lifted my hand and tossed it into the nearby trash can. Daniel's face changed as he saw the journal in the trash. He opened his mouth to speak, but forced himself to remain firm, scolding me. Absolutely illogical. Your temper is getting stranger and stranger. Then he put his arm around Bella's shoulders and left with Leo. Hearing the car drive away, I retreated to the guest room and collapsed onto the bed. Only after the dreadful palpitations subsided did I pick up my phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in a long time. Mr. Davies, it's Eleanor. I want to divest all my indirect shares in Vance Corporation. When Daniel started his business, I sold my house and borrowed money to raise capital for him. The shares had always been registered under his name. Mr. Davies quickly agreed, scheduling a meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Just as I hung up, a new message arrived from my attending physician at the Central Hospital. Ms. Vance, your test results are in. Your heart failure has worsened significantly. Conservatively, you have less than 3 days. Please come to the hospital for admission immediately. 3 days. I stared at the numbers on the screen, my dry lips curling into a bleak smile. Good. Divesting the shares and completing the donation procedures would be enough. Only 2 days remained until the final deadline. Daniel pushed open the guest room door. Without even looking at my pale face, he held out his hand for the keys to the Ocean Bay Beach house. That was the house he bought with his first big money, registered in my name, and the place where he proposed to me. I lay against the headboard, unmoving, and looked at his expectant face, asking what he wanted the keys for. He impatiently tugged at his tie, his face full of displeasure. Bella is feeling down and wants to clear her head by the sea. I'm taking her and Leo to stay at the Ocean Bay for 2 nights. She just got back and has nothing. As the lady of the house, can't you be generous enough to lend her the house for a few days? To take another woman to the place he proposed, for a vacation, and expect me to hand him the keys myself. I pulled open the drawer, found the keys and the access card, and tossed them onto the duvet. Take them. You can use everything inside however you like. My straightforward attitude surprised Daniel a little. He took the keys, looking uncomfortable as he explained they were just going to relax. I didn't respond, turning my back to him, and picked up my phone to text Mr. Davies. Also, please draft a divorce agreement for me. I don't want anything. Send it to me as soon as possible. Seeing that I ignored him, Daniel snorted, took the keys, and slammed the door shut as he left. In the evening, I heated the doctor's prescribed medicine in the kitchen. The bitter smell made me cough uncontrollably. Laughter and playful shouts from Bella and Leo came from the living room as they packed their bags. Suddenly, a gasp was followed by the sound of something heavy falling. Bella had fallen down the last 3 steps of the staircase. She sat on the floor, clutching her ankle, tears streaming down her face. Hearing the commotion, Daniel rushed downstairs. He picked Bella up tenderly, then spun around, glaring fiercely at me as I emerged from the kitchen. Eleanor, look what you've done. So what if I borrowed the keys to your old beach house? Do you really have to be so malicious as to push someone down the stairs? My hand, holding the medicine bowl, trembled. A few drops of scalding medicine splattered onto my hand, leaving a red mark. I was in the kitchen the whole time. I wasn't even near the stairs. Bella, nestled in Daniel's arms, shook her head tearfully. Daniel, don't blame Eleanor. I just lost my footing. Maybe she accidentally bumped me as she passed. Daniel completely exploded. He strode over and kicked the bowl of medicine out of my hand. The ceramic bowl shattered on the floor, and the life-saving medicine I had just spent 3 hours brewing splashed everywhere, soaking my pants. I looked at the mess on the floor. The stabbing pain in my chest returned, and I lost the strength to even stand upright. My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor, reaching out with a trembling hand to pick up the pills that were still usable. The moment my fingertips touched a pill, Leo stepped on my hand, grinding his heel into it. He gritted his teeth, glaring at me with intense disgust. His small face was full of loathing. You wicked woman, not only do you bully Bella, but you also cook this stinky stuff at home. I don't deserve a mom like you. You make me so ashamed. My finger bones were throbbing, and my skin scraped against the broken ceramic, starting to bleed. Hearing my own son utter such words, I didn't cry. My eyes didn't even well up. I pulled away my bloody, bruised hand, looked at the clear shoe print on its back, and forced a smile. A smile at the 8 years of devotion that had led to this outcome. Daniel, seeing me still smiling, looked even more disgusted. He picked up Bella and walked out without a backward glance. Come on, Leo. Let's take Bella to the hospital for a checkup. This crazy woman can stay home and reflect. The 3 of them left. Thunder rumbled outside the house, and a few minutes later, the rain began to pour. All the lights in the house suddenly went out, plunging the surroundings into darkness. The throbbing in my chest turned into a continuous, excruciating pain. I fumbled for my phone, only to find it dead. I could only crawl along the wall towards the landline in the living room. A mere few meters felt like 20 minutes. Finally, I reached the receiver and pressed it to my ear, but there was no sound. I traced the telephone line down and found a smooth cut. The phone line had been severed. Leo had been messing with craft scissors just before they left. He had personally blocked his own mother's last chance at life. The intense pain completely overwhelmed me. I curled up on the cold floor, my consciousness beginning to fade. I didn't even have the strength to breathe. I could only lie there, silently waiting in the dark, powerless house. I don't know how much time passed. The rain stopped. The faint light of dawn filtered through the window, and faintly, the wail of an ambulance siren could be heard outside. The mansion's front door was forcibly smashed open. A team of people in uniforms rushed in, their flashlights sweeping across my face. This was the private emergency medical team I had prepaid a high price to hire 2 days ago. The lead doctor knelt, checking my pupils, and urgently directed them to put me on a stretcher. Patient is in deep shock, heartbeat extremely weak. Immediate stretcher transfer, quickly. My body was numb. They carried me onto a stretcher and rushed me into the emergency room at Central Hospital. With the jolt of the defibrillator, I briefly regained a sliver of consciousness. The attending physician stood by the bed, holding a report, his face grim. Ms. Vance, your heart function is completely lost. You can't undergo a transplant surgery. The machines can only maintain your vital signs for the last 2 hours. Do you have any family members you need to speak to? A layer of mist clouded the oxygen mask. I used my remaining strength to weakly shake my head. No family left. The nurse looked distressed. According to regulations, She had to call my immediate family for confirmation. She dialed Daniel's number, which was on file, and put the phone on speaker by my pillow. It rang for a long time before someone picked up. From the other end, cheerful music and the sounds of fireworks played. Daniel, look at that firework, it's so pretty. Leo, come take a picture. Bella's joyful laughter echoed into the emergency room. The nurse paused for a moment before raising her voice. Hello, is this Mr. Daniel Vance? This is the Central Hospital emergency room. Your wife, Ms. Eleanor Vance, is in extremely critical condition and could pass away at any moment. Please come immediately to sign some papers. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Daniel's extremely impatient shout. Eleanor, are you done yet? Bella finally got to the amusement park to clear her head. Why do you have to pick this moment to fake your death and ruin the mood? I'm telling you, even if you die at home today, I won't come back to see you. After the noise, the phone seemed to be snatched away, and Leo's shrill voice came through. Exactly. Stop lying, you always use this trick. If you're really sick, then get on your knees and beg Bella for forgiveness, or we're absolutely not coming back. The medical staff in the emergency room exchanged glances, their eyes full of shock and sorrow. The ventilator hissed rhythmically. I raised my bloody and bruised hand, trembling. The nurse quickly brought the phone closer to my ear. I swallowed a final mouthful of bloody saliva and parted my dry lips. No need to come back. I hope you have fun. My voice was soft, without a ripple of emotion. After speaking, I used my last ounce of strength to press the end call button. The nurse, with reddened eyes, handed me the confirmation form for refusing resuscitation and consenting to organ donation. I didn't hesitate. I held the pen and shakily signed my name at the bottom. The pen slipped from my grasp and fell onto the bedsheet. The breath that had been trapped in my chest for 8 years finally dissipated. The lights above me blurred, and the alarms from the instruments faded into the distance. I was finally free. The monitor let out a steady, long beep, and only a flat line remained on the screen. Dozens of miles away at the amusement park, fireworks lit up the sky one after another. Daniel shoved his phone back into his pocket, his brows deeply furrowed, and muttered a curse under his breath. Bella linked arm in arm with him, pointed at the fireworks in the sky and laughed. He forced a smile, but his phone in his pocket vibrated violently again. Annoyed, he pulled out his phone. It was the same number from before. He answered, about to unleash a tirade. A cold female voice came from the other end. Mr. Vance, this is the organ donation department at Central Hospital. Your wife, Ms. Eleanor Vance, has been confirmed deceased, and organ procurement has been completed. Please come to the morgue as soon as possible to claim her remaining belongings. The amusement park was loud, a chaotic symphony of calliope music, the screams of teenagers on the roller coaster, and the deep, concussive thuds of the grand finale fireworks. Daniel Vance stood near the cotton candy stand, his fingers still smelling faintly of the expensive, sulfurous powder of the sparklers he had lit for Leo. Beside him, Bella Rivera was laughing, her face lit up in vibrant hues of magenta and gold by the explosions above. She held a large plush bear Jaden had. One for her, her small, delicate hand resting comfortably on Daniel's arm. Look, Dad, 8-year-old Leo shouted, pointing his toy sword toward the sky. The blue one looked like a star. I want to take another photo on Bella's phone. Go ahead, buddy, Daniel smiled, his face carrying the relaxed, indulgent expression of a father who had finally escaped the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of his own home. Just don't run too far. His phone in his breast pocket vibrated. He pulled it out with a slight frown, expecting it to be another one of Eleanor's attention-seeking messages. He had already threatened her on the phone 10 minutes ago, telling her that even if she died at home he wouldn't come back. He thought she'd have the decency to stop. The caller ID was the same number, the central line of the City General Hospital. Daniel, who is it? Bella asked, her voice soft, sweet, and carrying that gentle, helpless quality that had once kept him awake for an entire year. Is Eleanor still upset? Maybe we should go back. I don't want you two to fight. Because of me. It's fine, Bella, Daniel said, his voice turning cool, flat, and dismissive. She's just using the hospital's landline to make it look official. She probably paid some nurse $50 to play along. I'll settle this once and for all. He swiped the screen and raised the phone to his ear. Eleanor, I'm warning you for the last time. Mr. Daniel Vance? A cold, steady female voice cut through his tirade. It wasn't the nurse's voice from before. It was flat, perfectly metered, and carried the heavy, administrative weight of a coroner's office. This is the Organ Donation and Procurement Department at Central Hospital. We are calling to notify you that the donor surgery for Eleanor Vance was completed at 5:42 p.m. Daniel's hand froze midair. The sounds of the amusement park, the music, the laughter, the crackle of the fireworks, seemed to recede into a distant, underwater hum. What did you say? Daniel's voice lost its steady pitch, dropping into a thin, raspy scratch. Donor surgery? What is this joke? This is not a joke, Mr. Vance, the administrator said, her voice dropping into a chilling clinical register. Your wife signed the formal refusal of resuscitation and the organ donation consent form 30 minutes before her clinical death. Her kidneys, liver, and corneas have already been dispatched to 3 different regional medical centers. We require your immediate presence at the municipal morgue to sign the release forms for her remaining remains and to claim her personal belongings. The phone line went dead. Daniel stood by the cotton candy stand, his hand still holding the silent phone to his ear. The morning sun had not yet risen, but the air around him felt freezing cold, like ice that had been kept in a dark room for 100 years. Daniel. Bella's hand touched his arm, her fingers trembling slightly. What's wrong? You look so pale. Daniel looked down at his own hand. It was shaking. The corridor of the municipal morgue was silent, smelling of formaldehyde, old blood, and the dry, cold air of the refrigeration units. Daniel walked slowly down the concrete steps, his leather shoes making a sharp, rhythmic click-clack that sounded too loud in the quiet basement. Behind him, Leo clutched his arm tightly, his toy sword forgotten, his small face pale with a sudden, deep confusion. Dad. Leo whispered, his voice thin as a mosquito. Why are we here? Is Mom still playing her game? I want to go home. The smell is bad. Daniel didn't answer. He pushed open the heavy steel doors of the viewing room. Standing by the metal table was Dr. Miller, Eleanor's attending physician, and Mr. Davies, the Sterling family's chief financial lawyer. On the table lay a single, thin cardboard box containing my remaining personal belongings. Mr. Vance, Dr. Miller said, his voice flat, professional, and entirely devoid of warmth. Please sign here to confirm the receipt of the deceased's effects. Daniel walked to the table. His hand, usually so steady when signing multi-million-dollar corporate contracts, shook so violently he could barely hold the silver pen. Where is she? Daniel asked, his throat dry as paper. The remains have been transferred to the anatomy department of the university, as per her will, Dr. Miller said, looking at him behind his silver spectacles. She did not want a funeral. She did not want a grave. She requested that her remaining tissues be used for medical research. He pushed the cardboard box toward Daniel. Inside, there was no jewelry, no expensive clothes. There was only a single silver wedding ring, the one Daniel had bought for her when he hit his first big money, which she had quietly removed from her finger before her death, and a copy of her medical records. Daniel picked up the medical folder. As his eyes scanned the neat, printed charts, the color drained from his face, until he looked like a corpse himself. Heart failure. Daniel muttered, his voice cracking. Significant enlargement of the left ventricle. Onset date, October 12, 2016. The night of Leo's birth. He turned to Dr. Miller, his eyes wide and bloodshot. Why didn't she tell me? The doctor said she was just tired. She just needed rest. She was taking 362 hormonal injections to save the pregnancy, Mr. Vance, Dr. Miller said, his voice dropping into a chilling, administrative quiet. The strain on her cardiac muscles was irreversible. For 8 years, she lived on a knife's edge, her heart function maintained only by high-dosage cardiotonics. And last night, Dr. Miller's gaze shifted to Leo, who was staring at the floor in panic. The emergency call was placed from her private medical alarm, but the landline was physically severed. The forensic team found the cut was completed using a pair of children's craft scissors. Daniel's head jerked toward his son. Leo. Daniel's voice was a low, terrifying growl. Did you cut the line? Leo's breath caught in his throat. He stumbled back against the steel table, his face turning an ugly, blotched white. I just wanted to play, Bella said. The wire looked messy. She said I should clean up the room. The next morning, the storm finally reached New York, washing over the glass towers of the CBD in long, gray sheets. Mr. Davies stood in the center of Daniel's executive office at the Vance Corporation, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid and commanding. The divestment is complete, Mr. Vance, Mr. Davies said, his tone flat, professional, and entirely devoid of warmth. As per Miss Eleanor Vance's written instructions, signed 48 hours before her death, all her indirect shares in Vance Corporation have been officially liquidated. Liquidated. Daniel's primary financial director stood up, his face pale with fury. But those shares represent 42% of our core capital. If you liquidate now, the company's stock will collapse. The funds have already been transferred to the National Heart Association's Research Trust, Mr. Davies said, sliding a certified bank receipt across the table. And the credit lines Miss Eleanor secured using her mother's estate. They have been officially terminated. The Sterling Bank has issued a formal foreclosure notice for your warehouse in Brooklyn. Daniel sat behind his desk, his hands clutching his head. The insignificant, idle housewife he had dismissed had been the sole anchor of his corporate empire. The wealth he had used to buy luxury cars for Bella and high-end toys for Leo was entirely built on her silent, invisible sacrifices. No. Daniel whispered, his voice dead. She wouldn't do this. She loved me. She said she'd support me forever. She loved the man who wrote her a greeting card 16 years ago, Mr. Vance. Mr. Davies said, his eyes filled with a deep, silent contempt as he packed his documents into his briefcase. But the man who kicked her life-saving medicine away and let another woman use her pregnancy journal as a coaster did not deserve her love. He walked out of the room, leaving the empty boardroom to stare at the collapsed house of cards they had called an empire. Within 48 hours, the Vance Corporation's stock had fallen to zero, the bank seizing the mansion on Willow Street and his personal accounts to pay off the outstanding debts. At the temporary 2-bedroom apartment in Queens where Daniel had been forced to move his family, the quiet, domestic peace was completely gone. Bella sat in the cramped living room, her face pale, her silk robe wrinkled and smelling of stale smoke. The luxury lifestyle she had envisioned when she returned to the country had vanished, replaced by the grim, gray reality of a bankrupt household. Daniel, we can't live like this, Bella complained, her voice rising in a high, nasal shriek as she looked at the cold food on the table. The landlord said the rent is overdue. The water heater is broken. I'm an artist. I can't live in a place like this. Daniel sat by the window, his suit wrinkly, his hands clutching a small dirty plastic cup. It was the cup he had kicked out of Eleanor's hand, the one that had held her life-saving medicine. He had gone back to the empty mansion before the bank sealed the doors, searching through the trash can in the kitchen. He had found the grease-stained pregnancy journal Leo had used as a coaster. He opened it now. The pages were soft, yellowed, and covered in his wife's neat, familiar handwriting. May 12, 2016. Today was my 32nd shot. The pain was severe, but when I felt Leo kick for the first time, I knew every needle was worth it. Daniel held my hand and said we'd watch him grow up together. I'm so happy. October 12, 2023, my 35th birthday. Daniel forgot. Leo said he wanted to spend the day with Bella. My heart hurts, but I have to be strong for my family. Daniel let out a low, dry sob, a sound so hollow it made Leo shiver in the corner of the room. It was my journal, Leo whispered, his face pale as he looked at the open pages. Mom wrote those shots for me? Yes, Daniel said, his voice dropping into a dead, chilling register as he looked at his son. She took 300 shots to save your life. And you stepped on her hand and ground your heel into it because Bella had a headache. I didn't know, Leo wept, his small body shaking. Bella told me Mom was just pretending. She said Mom wanted to take Dad away from us. Get out, Daniel said. Daniel. Bella blinked, her voice trembling. I said get out, Daniel repeated, standing up slowly. His eyes, once so warm and protective when he looked at her, were now dark, empty, and terrifyingly cold. I gave you my wife's house, her money, her kitchen, and her life. And you faked a staircase fall to make me kick her medicine away. I did it because I loved you, she shrieked. You did it because you wanted her place, Daniel said softly. But her place was never something you could buy. The next morning, Daniel didn't go to work. He walked to the Central Hospital's administrative wing, carrying the small cardboard box of Eleanor's remaining belongings. He had spent the entire night reading her medical reports, his mind completely shut down by the physical reality of her disease. Mr. Vance, Dr. Stevens said, stepping out of the office. I didn't expect to see you here. The organ procurement was completed 3 days ago. Who received her heart, Dr. Stevens? Daniel asked, his voice hoarse, his hands shaking as he clutched his coat. Just tell me. I want to see them. I want to hear her heartbeat once. Under state law, the recipient list is highly confidential, Mr. Vance, Dr. Stevens said, his voice cold and flat. But even if I could tell you, you have no right to see them. Your wife signed a formal restriction, specifying that no member of the Vance family was to be contacted regarding the destination of her organs. He looked at Daniel's pale, sunken face, his eyes narrowing behind his spectacle. She didn't want you to hear her heart, Mr. Vance, because she knew that every time it beat, it would remind you of the child who cut her telephone line. Daniel fell back against the concrete wall, his breath coming in short, rattling gasps. The wedding card he had written 16 years ago, the one where he had sworn his heart would beat only for Eleanor, suddenly felt like an iron shackle dragging him down into the dark. A year later, the winter in Chicago was cold, but the sun was bright, casting a warm, golden Light over the brick houses of the Lincoln Park district. I stood by the window of our new home, a small 2-story brick house with a neat front garden and a white wooden fence. The air was clean, smelling of fresh pine and the sweet, cold wind of Lake Michigan. Mommy, look. A butterfly. A 3-year-old girl with dark, curly hair and wide, clear blue eyes ran out onto the deck, her small hands clutching a piece of bread as she pointed toward the sky. He's very high, Lily. I smiled, kneeling down to wipe a speck of snow from her cheek. Do you want to feed him? Yes, she laughed, her voice sweet, clear, and full of a wild, healthy energy. Beside her, Theodore Vance stepped out onto the deck, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. He smiled warmly as he saw us, walking over to wrap a warm arm around my waist, his touch firm, reassuring, and full of a quiet, deep respect. The new logistics contract was signed this morning, Elena, Theodore said, his voice dropping into that deep, sincere baritone. The Everhart Sterling division has officially become the largest in the country. We did it together, Caspian. I smiled, leaning my head against his shoulder. I looked out at the bright, open sky. The past was gone. The cold clinic bleach, the sound of the thick needle entering my arm, the red wine spilling over the asphalt, they had all turned into a faint, distant memory, washed away by the clean spring wind of the Pacific. I was Elena Everhart. I was no longer a walking blood bag, no longer a secret, and no longer a sacrifice. I was a mother, and my family was finally, beautifully complete. The private chapel of the Central Hospital was quiet, the warm light of the stained glass windows casting a soft, colored pattern over the marble altar. I stood by the wooden pews, a single, fresh white lily in my hand. I had spent the last 2 hours visiting the pediatric wing, watching the children play in the garden, including a small, pale 8-year-old girl named Clara who had received my heart 3 years ago. She was healthy now. Her skin was pink and warm, her dark eyes bright with a wild, healthy energy as she ran through the grass. She's a beautiful child, Eleanor. My mother's voice came from the air around me, soft, warm, and carrying the clean smell of mountain pine. You've given her a future. I know, Mom. I smiled, my spiritual form slowly beginning to dissolve into a warm, golden light that rose toward the vaulted ceiling. And my own future is finally starting. I didn't look down at the city, or the prison cell where Daniel Vance sat in the dark, clutching an old, grease-stained pregnancy journal. I turned my back to the empty mansion, my hand wrapping around my mother's, and walked up into the warm, endless light of the dawn. We were finally beautifully free.